God, it's...
Welcome back to First Up, the First Job in your busy day. As Paul indicated earlier, we're going to keep the spotlight on financial matters, financial issues, and we are going to share some information with you about an upcoming conference hosted by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of TNT, ICAT. It's happening next week, October 9th and 10th at the Hyatt Regency in Port of Spain. It's the International Accounting and Financial Conference. The theme this year, Staying Ahead of the Curve. To give us more details about this upcoming conference, representing ICAT is Nigel Matthew.
Good morning, Mr. Matthew.
Hi, good morning, Paul. Good morning, Chesime.
Thanks for joining us again. This particular conference, Staying Ahead of the Curve, is it possible to do that given what's happening in the international economy?
Well, I think we have to, because even this conference is put on by ICAT. It is really for accounting people, finance people, and of course non-accounting people as well. Staying ahead of the curve embodies your development in terms of yourself and of course business, whether you're involved in technology, operations, risk management, whether you're part of the regulators. We have to stay ahead of the curve in order to advance Trinidad cause.
Staying ahead of the curve presumes we are ahead of the curve. Some may say they will disagree with that given what we've seen with CLICO, HCU, and other issues facing the country now where we have to clean up billion-dollar messes to the tune of almost $20 billion.
Yes.
And because we have to do that, this kind of adds evidence to the fact that we may not have been ahead of the curve, or we may still not be ahead of the curve.
Well, even if we are not ahead of the curve, we still have to try to aspire to be ahead of the curve. Now, I know that, of course, CLICO issue is really a dark day in terms of our history, but notwithstanding that you mentioned 20 billion, but remember, CLICO still have a lot of assets. So that assets more than likely would sort of net off the taxpayers' burden with respect to the $20 billion.
But isn't the process what is in question here? I mean, the assets, one thing, the government investment to bring resolution is one thing, but isn't the issue of fiduciary prudence an issue of process and protocol and rules and regulations?
Precisely, there's an issue of also governance as well, in terms of how do we manage our financial affairs, whether that is CLICO, whether you're in the private sector or even in the public sector. And ICAT mandate is really to advance the profession in terms of accountability, transparency, and governance. So at the end of the day, the users of the financial statements who are relying on the auditors or the accountants can have that level of assurance that yes, what is presented, it is in fact fair, a fair view of the state of the company in question.
One of the topics that you will be discussing actually is accounting transparency and financial stability. When ICAT does its survey of companies in Trinidad and Tobago, how many of them are struggling with those issues?
In terms of accountability?
Yes.
Well, it's a really challenge because in terms of our own particular culture, but we are sort of moving towards that in terms of here what? Trinidad is developing. Trinidad public, and probably we underestimate that as well. Trinidad public is very, very, I would say, much more educated, let's say 10 years ago. So there must be a level of accountability and transparency. There must be a level of, here what, I want to know what, if you're on the auditor, that you are presenting a fair view of the financial state of the company so that I can have that level of assurance.
What is your membership telling you about the challenges they face in practicing at the highest levels? Most, if not all of them, would have been trained to international standards. These types of forums, these types of conferences provide also that networking ability and also the expertise to keep the sector moving forward in terms of practices and protocols. But what are they telling you from previous conferences and from networking that are the biggest challenges they face?
Well, one of the biggest challenges, as I just want to repeat that again, is really governance and, of course, reliability of financial statements. So having this international conference whereby we have local speakers and, of course, foreign speakers, because Trinidad and Tobago, the accounting profession, we subscribe to International Financial Reporting Standards / International Accounting Standards. So if we subscribe to that internationally, whereby we have universally accepted accounting standards, there would be some level of reliance, and in terms of the governance, for instance, I just want to make mention of CLICO again. What went wrong with CLICO with respect to the financial statements? Why some of those issues were not picked up before? So again, this is really advancing the cause of subscribing to International Financial Reporting Standards and that level of reliance, to have that level of comfort by users and more so investors.
Another topic that you'll be tussling with during the conference, combating crime, its impact on the economic curve. And normally when we hear crime, we think of the shoot-'em-up style of crime, but white-collar crime is having debilitating effects, white-collar crime and corruption, debilitating effects on our our sustainable development agenda. Your thoughts?
Okay, my thoughts on that, and you mentioned that in terms of staying ahead of the curve, combating crime, and that will be done by Gillian Lucky, Director of Police Complaints Authority. Now, there was a survey done by the Chamber of Commerce, I think 2-3 years ago, whereby it was reported that security cost because of crime increased between 30 and 40%. So if you're running an organization, you're faced with that abnormal high crime cost, then you may be tempted, I'm not saying you will, you may be tempted to sort of short circuit other areas in terms of quality of service, in terms of the type of information that you produce. So it has a connection with respect to the accounting. How do we treat crime in terms of the accounting profession? What level of comfort do we have with respect to providing for that in terms of a cost and still trying to have the bottom line, which is really the net profit?
As technology evolves, the sector is becoming more and more reliant on technology. How is that being treated at the conference? Given the fact that Trinidad and Tobago is moving toward being the financial capital of the Caribbean, certainly the region, we've had heavy investments as articulated by the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Vassan Bharat, about being a regional hub for support services for financial institutions. How is that being treated at the conference?
Well, two areas, and I just want to mention those 2 areas at the conference with respect to what we call the staying ahead of the curve, the technological perspective. And that will be done by Ronald Hines, Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of Telio Systems Limited, looking at technology, how it impacts on the whole financial market. But you mentioned in terms of the International Financial Center, and I just want to mention that, Paul, there are 2 major areas that we'll start off the program with on the 9th. And those areas, exploring Trinidad and Tobago as the financial center of the Caribbean, the local perspective. And that will be done by Mr. Ram Ramesh, CEO of Trinidad and Tobago International Financial Center. Remember, this organization was started in the previous regime, and it has come back because the government recognizes that Trinidad can be a regional financial hub. So that is very, very much on the front burner. In addition to that, we also have exploring Trinidad and Tobago as the financial center of the Caribbean in a regional perspective. And that will be done by Professor Avinash Prasad. So here we have the International Financial Center. How would that affect the accounting profession? 2 weeks ago, it was reported by the Honorable Minister of Trade and Industry, Vassan Bharat, that already one major international organization has already signed on, and the ministry is in talks with 2 others. So once we have those type of investment, those type of international players, it will have an impact on our finance and accounting profession in terms of how do we account for all these international transactions and derivatives. But
that also places a spotlight, and when the spotlight is placed on our regulatory framework, is that going to be dealt with comprehensively? Because the more international investment we have, the more strident or the more the stronger our regulatory framework needs to get to really meet and consistently stay within international benchmarks.
Yeah, and I'm glad you raised that, Paul, because one of the criticism is that we have advanced as a country in terms of products and development, but our regulators or the regulations have not really moved commensurately with respect to the profession. And yes, that will be dealt with in terms of what we call the regulators' perspective by Professor Patrick Watson. Patrick Watson is the chairman of the Trinidad and Tobago Securities and Exchange Commission. So there must be some level of guidance, some level of rules, a level playing field in terms of how we manage our affairs in the finance and accounting world.
And the conference takes place on the 9th and 10th of October at the Hyatt Regency Hotel. Are there still room for people to book?
Yeah, there's still room. You can call ICAT office now, 623-8000.
623-8000,
and they will accept your registration. Today, we're trying to sort of close off the registration list.
So make sure you call by today. Thank you very much, Mr. Matthew.
Thanks a lot.
Once again, the conference takes place 9th and 10th, at the Hyatt Regency Hotel, 623-8000. That's the number. News is next with Stacey and Providence, and more after that on First Up.